And I sort of walked a gray line a couple times, and those two, those little compromises sent me down literally like a 5-year legal battle with my business partners and being investigated by the city here in LA for labor disputes and things like that. And man, that's really stressful. And I invited that energy into my life by not really knowing what I stood for.
And many entrepreneurs fear failure because we are conditioned to success, right? We always look at success as something which everybody is really chasing for and dream to be successful. But you lived through one of the worst scenarios as well. So how did you rebuild not just your businesses but your self-worth?
When, as a young entrepreneur, considering this path, or a young person considering the path of entrepreneurship, don't be afraid of it, because at the end of the day, it's just not that big a deal. So what? I met so many people who failed multiple times and they come back and they try again. And the stigma around failure is not as big as you think. Like, nobody really cares.
What are the 3 red flags that should make any business leader walk away from a deal, no matter the upside?
Okay, 3. Number 1, again, trusting your intuition. Number 2 is, if somebody is getting taken advantage of in the transaction in any way, you should not do it. And many times people make a mistake of complicity, like, oh yeah, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'll do it too.
So folks, you have tuned into TGV, and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording. And we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak. And here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. And we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host, Navin Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So folks, our guest for today is Nick Halaris. He's an entrepreneur, investor, and a thought leader who turned a $150 million real estate empire into ashes and then rebuilt his life with purpose. He's a Stanford law graduate and president of Metros Capital. And Nick now empowers others through his Profit Plus newsletter, which has over 20,000 subscribers, and also the Nick Halaris Show, a podcast helping entrepreneurs align profit with purpose and success with integrity. So, Nick, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Navin, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that very generous introduction. Excited to be here.
Most welcome, Nick. And first things first, why should somebody tune into our podcast episode and spend 30-35 minutes of their valuable time with us today?
I love that question. Here's a brief answer for it. Look, our world is infected with this idea, for better or worse, that we need to be successful in life. And this is like a product of America, probably, and America's cultural influence on the world. And the American dream has become a global dream. And so people everywhere around the world are trying to be successful in this certain way. And there's value to that, but there's also some risk to it. And so this is going to be a discussion about like how you can go about pursuing this global dream, this global cultural dream, but doing so in a way that doesn't kind of lead you down the wrong path.
Right. Superb. So, folks, today we are going to have an unfiltered conversation from $150 million empire to collapse and come back with Nick Halaris. And before we get into our conversation today, here is an exciting twist. As always, let us tickle our guest's brain first. So, Nick, my format is first we will do a rapid fire round of random words and then mainstream questions, and finally, again, one more rapid fire round. So it's time for us to kick off the first rapid fire round. I'm going to share a few random words. I would like you to respond to those words briefly, okay, without thinking much. Whatever comes to your mind, you have to just mention it. If you're ready, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, my first word is curiosity.
Superpower.
Invention.
America's great gift.
Future.
Gosh, the thing not to focus on.
I love it because we ignore the present. And then universe,
The thing that connects us all,
leadership,
taking care of other people,
success,
making the best contribution you can make to your community.
aliens,
Not as scary as you think.
life,
A great journey through the mystery,
wealth.
relationships, and love.
Awesome. And here comes the last one, role model.
God.
Wow. So crisp and so clear. Thank you so much for participating in the first rapid fire round and also for being part of our journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. So let's get into the mainstream now. So, Nick, talk to us about who is your guiding voice.
Yeah, I've had a lot of different experiences sort of with guiding voices. I obviously had my own parents to begin with. I was a person who sort of actively sought out mentors, and I've had some great ones along the way, including my current business partner, John Young, who's very much like me, just happens to be maybe 30 years older than I am. So John is someone my parents, some of my teachers have been phenomenal. I had an incredible high school teacher named Mrs. Voss, who I still think about all the time. So I've been lucky to have role models of different types and bring different energies to the table. And um, that's one of the things that I think was the key to my success was that I was willing to seek these people out um, and ask for advice. And it's something that I'm trying to mentor young people and even my own kids. Like that, it's amazing what happens if you're willing to just ask for help.
Right. Superb. And now talk to us about your success mantra, as in top three things that have contributed to your success so far.
Yeah, I think the first one is consistent willingness to be uncomfortable and face your fears. I
Mhm.
had, sometime in my 20s, I had written down a list of all the things I was afraid of. And I literally systematically kind of went through those. And
Mhm.
every time I faced a different fear, like new opportunities opened up in my life. And so I still try to do that today. For example, I've never been a great dancer. Like I always felt really awkward on the dance floor. My wife makes fun of me and so do my friends. So I started taking dance lessons recently. And let me tell you, like I thought I was pretty self-confident. I'm 46 years old, but it was really awkward to do hip hop dance for me. Like that was to me that was the type of dance that was most um made me most afraid was hip hop dance. And I've been doing it and I'm actually getting it. So face your fears, number 1. Number 2, you have to learn how to it seems like obvious, but you have to know what you really want. And this is something that I personally have struggled with, and I've seen a lot of people in my life struggle with because we get all these influences from the outside coming at us. Culture tells us what we want. Our parents tell us what we want. And we lose touch with an important part, which is ourself. And so I'm a big advocate for people engaging in all kinds of self work, not self work in a selfish standpoint, but just really trying to understand yourself, like journaling and meditating and um, reflecting on what you care about and really just trying to like get real with yourself about what you want. Because a lot of times answering that question is like the key. And if you answer it wrong, you end up down the wrong path. And then finally, the thing that has been really animating me in my life the last decade or so is this spiritual idea that I came across when I was in my own personal crisis. My I call it my early midlife crisis. Maybe I'm going through another one right now, but my early midlife crisis, which is if you study philosophy and spirituality and you read the mystics and whatnot, there's this unbelievable consistency across time, across culture, and across religious traditions, which is that the key to the good life or the key to success involves orienting yourself not in a selfish manner, but in a selfless manner. And what selfless means is not that you deny yourself and you deny what you care about. It's that you just have a different intention. And so your intention is, instead of, getting the most amount of money for myself, it's how can I make the best contribution I can make to my community? How can I serve? What can I do to help other people? And when your work is answered in that, or pointed in that direction, you get all the other things you were looking for anyways. You get money, you get accolades, whatever's interesting to your personality. It will come to you if you orient your work in that final way, like this outward way.
Hmm. Excellent. And also share with us the toughest lessons that you have learned in your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, the toughest. Gosh, there's so many. One of the things about being an entrepreneur that I think is helpful actually to your development as an individual is that, man, you take a lot of hits. You get short on money, so you have financial pressure, you make bad decisions, you get in lawsuits. Like, entrepreneurship is no joke. You get in partnership disputes like I got into, and these things challenge you in a different kind of way. It's not to say that you can't get that in other areas of life if you take a different path, but entrepreneurship puts that all of that kind of energy like right on your doorstep, and so you have to deal with it. But the toughest one that I learned personally, just to be frank, is that I was someone who I sort of thought I I knew what I stood for, and I thought I had a certain moral compass. And when I was in the pressure of my first entrepreneurial journey, I made some decisions that, maybe they weren't really consistent with my true self. And I was compromising my integrity in a way. Fortunately, these decisions, like, didn't end me up in jail like Sam Bankman-Fried or something like that. But and I sort of walked the gray line a couple times, and those two, just those little compromises sent me down literally like a 5-year legal battle with my business partners, and being investigated by um, the city here in LA for labor disputes and things like that. And man, that's really stressful. And I invited that energy into my life by not really knowing what I stood for. And that was a hard pill to swallow. But the trauma of it, or the difficulty of it, has made me a better person for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. And your journey from a $150 million empire to losing everything sounds like a real life case study in resilience. So, what did that rock bottom teach you that success never could?
Yeah. Yeah, my journey was really wild, like rapid success followed by rapid deterioration. And what's interesting about it is my rock bottom was just being so far deep in this hole that I wasn't sure I could get out of it, but somehow I actually managed to get out of it. And so there was a moment in time when I thought I was gonna lose all my investors' money and have all kinds of problems. But fortunately, that actual disaster scenario didn't happen, and we actually did quite well despite all of these problems that I was facing with. But what I learned in those moments is the paramount importance of getting real with yourself. That's why when we were talking earlier about the success, 3 success factors or whatever, like, you really have to know yourself. You have to know what you stand for, and you have to be willing to stand up to the world if it comes into conflict with those things. And so in those dark times, I got real with myself about what I cared about and what I believed in. And I built up the confidence. Just being so low, I was able to see, like, hey, maybe it's not so bad. I can deal with it because I have my family around and people love me, and you can draw strength from other places. And that's what I think is the key to resilience, is just to have the confidence you can handle it. Life may punch you in the face and punch you in the stomach, but take a deep breath, look around all the people that care about you, and just get through it.
Yeah, got it. And when you look back from the lawsuits, the collapse, and the rebuilding, what would you tell the version of yourself who thought success was all about money?
Yeah, my previous, my younger self was actually kind of an odd an odd combination because I was someone who was actually always community oriented and interested in sort of the fight to make a better world. But I had bifurcated these two ideas in my head. Like there was the economic Nick and then there was the community Nick. And that's a big mistake in my view. Like there's nothing in life that can be looked at in sort of a silo. You have to everything is together. So your endeavors to be a good person cannot be separated from what you're doing every day. And so like the way in which you go about earning money has to be consistent with the entire part of your personality. And so that's what the big aha was like, hey, I can do this. I can be myself completely. And I don't have to go down this road of like being some like aggressive, cutthroat business person, which is very much of the American ethos. Um, but it's not true. Most people I know that are successful aren't don't engage in business like that. And I just had to learn that the hard way.
And many entrepreneurs fear failure because we are conditioned to success, right? We always look at success as something which everybody is really chasing for and dream to be successful. But you lived through one of the worst scenarios as well. So, how did you rebuild not just your businesses, but your self worth?
Yeah, that was such a humbling experience for me because I had based so much of my self confidence and sense of self worth on these external factors. This success, this American ideal of being financially successful and so yeah, it was difficult to face the dark side or face the fact that like, hey, there's all kinds of scenarios where you have no money, and so how does that make you feel? I had to face that quite a bit. Um, but I think that to put it into a greater context, those are the kinds of lessons that entrepreneurship will teach you like really fast. And so that's why I think there's a kind of magic to it because everybody, like I'm a big student of biographies. So I read all kinds of biographies. I'm currently reading a Mark Twain biography, and it's very helpful. It's actually really helpful to read these things because you realize that all of these people that we sort of make heroes of, they all have gone through stuff that we go through. They've all had crisis. Mark Twain famously had one of his companies go bankrupt. And when he was much older and he had to spend like several years like traveling around the world giving speeches, even though he was in bad health and his family was in bad health, just to make the money to pay off the debt stuff. And so it's helpful just to put it in a bigger context. And when as a young entrepreneur, considering this path or a young person considering the path of entrepreneurship, don't be afraid of it because at the end of the day, it's just not that big a deal. So what? I met so many people who've failed multiple times and they come back and they try again. And the stigma around failure is not as big as you think. Like nobody really cares. The only people that, we overemphasize how big of a deal it is if there's like a bad business transaction. But the rest of the world just could care less. So
Right. Got it. And you have been open about legal battles and also reputational struggles, right? So, what is one truth about failure that people misunderstand the most?
one truth about failure. Huh.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that people get wrong about failure is they over connect it to their sense of self, psychologically speaking. So, talking to people who have gone through either like a legal battle like I went through or a company failure, there's so much of their own self-confidence, their own ego that gets attached to this sort of objective real world experience, unnecessarily so, because one of the features of capitalism is creative destruction. And so the way to think about this is more like, listen, I know without a shadow of a doubt, if I engage in capitalism, that I'm going to lose. I'm going to fail. You have to accept that. It's like to use an athletic analogy, like, man, if you play sports and you're a quarterback or something, you know without a shadow of doubt you're going to throw some interceptions. You're going to fumble it. You're going to make some bad decisions. But who cares? That's just the nature of the game. It doesn't mean that you're a bad player or you're a bad entrepreneur. Like, you just have to be willing to accept the negative aspects in order to participate in the positive. And I feel like if people can keep that in mind, it might give them a better, an easier pathway to, taking the risks of becoming an entrepreneur or following whatever your dream is. This is true of life. It's not just true of capitalism. So it's like, man, you want to be an artist? Accept the fact that it might go bad and just do it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And when everything collapsed, and what was your first step towards recovery, and what role did purpose play in that recovery path?
Yeah. In my experience, what ended up happening was I turned I turned inward in a major way and started to really spend time every day. Like, I would get up at started at 5 a.m. and then it pushed it back to 4 and pushed it back to now where my morning routine is 3:30 a.m. And I journaled, I read everything that was interesting to me. So I read a lot of mystical writings and a lot of philosophy, and I would journal about it, and I would try to sort of unpack what was really going on inside of me. And these practices were really useful in the crisis moment because it was a way for me to eliminate the anxiety that I was feeling. For example, like, I had a hard time sleeping during this time period, but sitting down and writing for an hour and reading for an hour, like, that really calmed me down. And I still do it to this day, even though I haven't been in that. So I think that you have more strength than you realize, and the strength comes from following what you really are interested in, like what feels right for you, and not being afraid of that. That's one of the things that I learned in those dark times, was like, man, I'm really interested in spiritual writings. I'm really interested in philosophy. Like, why don't I actually prioritize that in my life? And in doing that and actually following through on what I want, good things happened.
Yeah. And how do entrepreneurs protect themselves from toxic partnerships and also value misalignment? Can they be proactive?
Yeah. This, to me, just studying entrepreneurship in my lifetime, just the people that I know, this is absolutely the number one risk of entrepreneurship, is that you get into a business with people that you're not aligned with. And so, like, man, if you study like venture capital returns, for example, an enormous number of the businesses that fail, there's a partnership or leadership dispute that's at the center of that failure. And so it's a huge issue. And one of the challenges of our time is that entrepreneurship has become so exciting as a pathway to success that people are pursuing this at a very young age, which is really cool. Like, there's a part of it that's really cool and exciting. Like, man, 20-year-olds starting businesses and changing the world. There's examples of that all over the place. But one of the downsides of that is that, as a man in particular, like, I think women actually uh, advance much quicker along these lines, but men tend to develop later and develop a sense of their sort of self-understanding and their moral compass much later in life. And so it's very easy, actually, to make a mistake in the formation of a business as a young man, because you don't even know. You're not in touch. You're so out of touch with what you actually care about that you're just like focused on something else. You're like, not even, you might even feel it. Like, in my case, what was so interesting about my case was that I have a really strong intuition. And I can actually feel my intuition physiologically. So like if somebody rubs me the wrong way, like I actually feel that in my body. And what's crazy is that when I was in my 20s, I just ignored that, which is absolutely, a critical mistake. Like you should not do that. And so it just takes a long time. So my advice to young people is really as soon as you can, as soon as you become aware of the possibility of doing introspective work like journaling, meditating, and practices like that, do them. And then learn to communicate with your internal self, your intuition, and don't ignore it. Man, if something doesn't feel right, it's not. It's a great sign that that is not right. And you should listen to it.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And what are the three red flags that should make any business leader walk away from a deal, no matter the upside?
Yeah. Okay. Three. No, number one, again, trusting your intuition. Man, if you get a bad feeling about somebody and you're like contemplating getting into like a long-term relationship, like you should not do that. And it'll be clear to you. Like human beings, they don't have to be trained to know who they connect with and who they don't. But when you get a clear signal from your own body and mind that this is not a good person for you, you should listen to it. It's very similar to like romantically, right? Like you wouldn't if you didn't like feel the romantic feeling, you wouldn't sign up for it. You would say, you know what, this relationship isn't right for me. But the same is true for business. It's just a slightly different equation. So that's one. Number two is if somebody is getting taken advantage of in the transaction in any way, you should not do it. So that's one of the things actually that a lot of people struggle with because we have made heroes of this idea of an aggressive, competitive way of capitalism. But man, taking advantage of people is terrible for your soul. You should absolutely not take advantage of people. And so I like to look at any business transaction through that lens 100%. Because it's easy. You can look at a situation and somebody's desperately trying to sell a property. But maybe they don't have the mental wherewithal to know the decision they're making. And so if you don't care about the bigger picture, you might say, yeah, you know what? They're selling me the property for 100K. I know it's worth 200K. I'm just going to take that money from them. But to me, that's a huge mistake, even though you could make a profit. And I'm trying not to do that in any environment, any case. And then, what do we, that was two. We need three, right? Three red flags. The other red flag, this one is much harder it's harder to put in practice, but it's super important, which is you have to be so, in my opinion, you have to be so aware of the consequences of your decisions when you conduct business that you aren't even complicit in things that you don't agree with. And so a lot of mistakes that people make in business when it comes to conducting it in a way that's consistent with their morals and their soul is that if it's not obvious, like the example I shared, that was obvious that it was taking advantage of someone, they might just go along with it. And many times people make a mistake of complicity, like, oh yeah, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'll do it too. And so I feel like there's like an extra level of awareness that you need to bring to business in particular, especially when you dealing with other humans and making hiring and firing decisions. And these are real people who are worth just as you, no matter what they get paid and what you get paid. And so you can't act in a way that's sort of flippant. You have to think of it as a sacred process anytime you're conducting business.
Got it. And the myth of overnight success is damaging, right? And what is the reality behind the long game of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. This is one of the biggest negative aspects of our mostly, I mean, this is probably true globally, but speaking as an American, like America is obsessed with the overnight success. Is absolutely like a part of our cultural um obsession. And it's in our movies, it's in our music, it's in the things that captivate our attention about young athletes, for example. These people who like LeBron James, he was anointed when he was like 12 years old and to become a billionaire basketball player, right? Like you see this everywhere. But the reality of business and entrepreneurship is that overnight success, even if it does happen, it usually, number one, it usually reverses. Um, and the truer path involves like a way of life. That's the part about business and entrepreneurship that people don't understand. It's not a thing that you do in a discrete moment to achieve some kind of discrete goal. It's a way of being. It's a way of approaching the world with a sense of openness and creativity. And if you do that with a long-term perspective, it's easier to make the right decision when things come across your desk, challenging decisions, because you're not looking for some quick win. You're thinking about like, okay, I'm going to do this forever. And so in that lens, what's the right decision? And that makes usually almost always results in a better answer.
Yeah. Got it. And what do you define legacy today, and what would you want yours to be remembered for?
Yeah. I think this is really important. I think it's more important than people actually realize. It's sort of the antithesis to the overnight success kind of energy. Like that is very like focused in a very discreet way, and it's about ego and selfish desires and things like that. Where legacy is much more about your soul and your true sense of identity. And I'm a big nerd of literature, and one of my favorite works of all time is the Iliad. And the Iliad is actually a story about legacy and about the challenges that human beings face when dealing with the concept of legacy. So basically, the whole story is about like, am I willing to risk my life to be famous forever in history? That's basically what the story is about. And these individuals, like the heroes of it, they answer that question with yes. And there's all kinds of consequences for answering that question with yes, like dying young, losing everybody you know, those like serious consequences. So I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I think, to follow up on some of the other elements of the conversation we've been having, like, this is why you need to think long term, because your legacy is what going to really matter to you. Like, man, if you're lucky to make it to late life, let's say these days, man, you can make it to 90. You're not going to be thinking about the time that you took advantage of the old lady and bought her property from her for a cheap price. You're going to be thinking about something much more serious. And so my advice to people is prioritize legacy. Really try to answer this question. I think there was a famous self-help guru, Stephen Covey, who wrote about this in one of his books. Like, you should actually write down your what you want people to say about you when you're dead, and that's a good guideline. And so for me, in my own right now, if I had to answer that question, I want to be remembered the most as, a good friend, a good father, a good husband. Like, to me, it's about the relationships that I have with people. And business, maybe there's an element of business success in there. Like, if there is, it's like, man, I would love to be remembered as someone who championed the idea that business can be a force for good. And since it can be, it should be. And that I live that out, not just in writing and in advocating on podcasts, but actually live that out in the way that I conducted business every day. So that's where I'm at with it.
Wonderful. And this has been an incredible and most importantly, unfiltered conversation so far. And it's time for us to add some more spice and excitement to the episode, which means we have come to the second segment, second rapid fire round. If you're ready, let's keep the ball rolling.
Let's do it.
Yeah, my first bullet out of second rapid fire. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
Okay, I like this one. I think it would say, uh, the task of life every day or the goal of life every day is to make a contribution to your community in a positive way.
Hmm. Yeah, good one. And describe yourself in just one word.
Fun.
And most expensive mistake of your career.
Wow. Yeah, I think the most expensive was actually the formation decision of my first business. I partnered with some friends of mine who I wasn't necessarily aligned with, and the breakup of this partnership actually cost me the most amount of money because we spent so much stupid money fighting with each other about money um, in legal fees. That's what actually cost me the most. Yeah,
Got it. Best advice you ignored, but you wish you hadn't.
yeah. I actually remember this vividly. I was on a call with an experienced real estate investor that one of my mentors had introduced me to, and it was right when I was in the process of forming my first business, and he was explaining to me about partnership disputes. He's like, be careful about partnerships. They can be dangerous.
Mhm.
And in my youthful confidence and lack of self awareness, I was like, man, this guy, he just doesn't know how to deal with people like I do. That's literally what I thought to myself. And man, I was completely wrong about that.
Yeah, fair enough. And failure or fortune, what taught you more?
Oh, that's easy. Yeah. Failure is the best teacher for sure. Success, you do learn some things from successful moments. But man, when you're low, when things don't work out, when conflict shows up on your in your world and your life, when sorrow and regret and shame and guilt, like these things have a way of teaching you like nothing else. There's something to it's actually similar. It's similar actually to the process of the way our bodies work. This is what's so fascinating, right? Like if you want to be a super strong person, you have to work out so hard that it hurts, like physically hurts. So there's an analogy there to like how your soul develops. It's the same concept. Like for whatever reason, that's kind of beings that we are. We actually have to suffer in order to get better.
And here comes the last one for the second rapid fire round. What is one electronic gadget or a fantasy gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
What the world needs more than anything right now, especially in the urban environments around the world, is like an air taxi that's safe because traffic is like killing people and killing productivity and it's absolutely mind numbing. And so I'm pulling for the air taxis and hopefully they show up ASAP.
Yeah, good one. I think that has become a universal problem in urban areas, as you said. I wish that becomes a reality very soon. And after that amazing second rapid fire, let's flip back to the mainstream. So, Nick, what advice do you have for young entrepreneurs who are chasing funding and validation rather than meaning?
Yeah. I think my general advice to people who are called to the entrepreneurial life is to have a little patience with it. Like it's more important that you put yourself on a path that has some real connection to you what you really care about than it is to be successful in the short term. And so those other things like funding or validation, like they're almost irrelevant if you make the wrong decision. And so like I really advise people to think think really deeply and seriously about the type of work that they want to do and more importantly the type of contribution that they want to make to the world because we get conditioned down this path of like okay, like I remember when I was coming up the question was basically not like what do I want to do, how do I want to show up in the world. It was like what is the fastest way to get rich. That was essentially what we were focused on, me and a lot of my colleagues. And there's something wrong with that. Very wrong. Because look, I'm not going to lie, like having financial resources is better than not having financial resources. So I understand the draw, the pull to want to get rich. It does change your life. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. However, it's more important to do it in something that is actually fulfilling to you. And so I really would encourage people, no matter what their age, to prioritize purpose. And you'll know, like the interesting thing about purpose is if you wake up and you're excited to do what you're about to do, like that's a really good sign. That means you're kind of in the right place. But if you wake up and you're like, I gotta grind this out, grind culture, like man, that to me is a sign that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
I loved it and such a powerful advice. So, Nick, I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And how is your experience being hosted on The Guiding Voice?
Um, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I love the format of your show. I find the rapid fire stuff like super interesting because it's actually a nice window into your own psyche because if you do it the right way, like I was trying to do it, you're tapping part of your unconscious mind rather than like, hey, let me do what I can do to sound smart. So I really like it, and I really like the premise of your show in general because I think that it's not something that a lot of people are talking about, and I feel like what I've discovered over the years is that the guiding voice is more inside you and more in your personal connections than you realize. So like I was someone who wanted to like find my guiding voice in like Abraham Lincoln or something. Like somebody like that, like just tell me what to do. But it doesn't work that way. You need to work with yourself and the conditions of your own life and relationships to figure it out.
Right. Thank you so much once again for joining us and looking forward to hosting you again in the near future. And I wish you all the best, Nick. Really pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Navin.
Yeah. So, friends, that was our episode with Nick Halaris. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request in case if you have loved the episode and enjoyed the conversation, request you to share with at least three of your friends or colleagues or family members who would also like TGV, the guiding voice. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you. And it's time for us to hop into the trivia segment. Having had amazing conversation with Nick about his success, failure, and again discovering his own purpose, I thought of presenting you the Phoenix principle. The greatness born from failure. The first fact is that did you know that Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb? And Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. And fast forward, you know what has happened. Steve Jobs was ousted from his own company before returning to make Apple a global icon. In fact, it is the first company in the history to cross $1 trillion market cap. And J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter became a worldwide phenomenon. And the average millionaire has gone bankrupt 2.5 times before lasting success. So the moral here is entrepreneurs don't escape failure. They use it as raw material for greatness. So if you know any entrepreneur who has demonstrated raising from the ashes just like Phoenix, do let me know about them. We would happy to host them. And folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGB family. So until next time, take care, stay inspired, and remember, the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you in the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care. Love you all. Bye bye.